want to start you off with this number. $14.7 billion. We're undergoing one of the greatest wealth transfers in American history from everyday working families across America. They are subsidizing utility companies and AI companies' rapid growth, and they're passing it on to you and me and your neighbors. So just real quick, statistically, on average, everybody's bill has jumped $20 to $30 a month this year, and it's projected to go up to $70 at 2033. So who am I and why I'm here? Mike did a great job doing an introduction, so I can go through this really quickly. I'm also a managing consultant of McNeese Group. We're a sustainability consulting company. You may want to intern with me. We do a lot. We really specialize in large-scale solar, wind, and battery storage projects. That's kind of our expertise. And we also do a lot of consulting with governments. And I also am known about my op-eds in Florida Politics, USA Today, The Hill. So I do analysis on policy at a national level and a lot on the Florida level. And I applaud you all for coming so early to a talk on policy. It's nice that you came, so I appreciate that. I'm also, as Mike said, I'm the host of FSU's InNOLEvation, because everything has to be null, right? InNOLEvation Mindset, where every week I interview the best entrepreneurs and innovators of FSU and students and alumni. And there is a lot of sustainability episodes if you are interested in kind of hearing from some industry leaders from our FSU community. I think recently, and I think people think that data centers are the villain in all this. I have a different take on this. I think weak policy is. I feel that our policymakers are not educated in this space, number one. I think that lobbyists are coming in and giving them a lot of misinformation, and they are being extremely active in this. In fact, I was recruited by a large utility company, and they wanted me to basically go into rural communities to convince them that putting a data center in their community is the right idea. And I'm not saying it is or isn't, but I just want to let you know that are active in trying to find places. But there is definitely an impact that a lot of people don't know or understand that these data centers are doing. One of the big numbers that just to point out right here, 100 billion, that's the estimated ratepayer, you and me, savings if we have good policy that makes these AI companies and utilities pay their own way and not pass it on to us. Another big thing driving this is 7 years. It's the wait time to be able to bring on a new gas turbine to give the energy to produce the data centers and things like that. And one kind of good news, and you may not know this, 93% of all new electricity was renewable last year. It's a really interesting time, and this is not a political speech, this is just observation. It is very interesting to me that our current administration wants to really fast track and have energy first and everything, but has a very negative view of renewable plus storage. And we're not going to talk about it politically, we're going to talk about it economically today. So, what we're seeing is a K-shaped electricity economy. So basically that means that utility bills have risen faster than inflation for 6 straight years, and large commercial users often lock in favorable rates where families are stuck with the cost. When I'm referred to and quoted in different publications, and I've been dubbed the kitchen table economist. I'm not an economist, but I am an analyst, and yes, my lens that I look through with all energy policy is the working family and our companies externalizing costs while internalizing profits. And that is probably like my big drum. I am a capitalist, but I think one of the Achilles heels in capitalism is that we allow companies to externalize their costs and internalize the profits. And I just don't think it's fair or it's right. And if, I'm pro-business, but I think business should pay their own way. So that's just transparently, that's where I'm coming from. The good news is we're seeing some states put in legislation and really getting it right. Arizona opened a regulatory docket protecting ratepayers from data center infrastructure costs. Georgia proposed legislation prohibiting cost pass-through, meaning what happens a lot is the data companies come into a community, say like Tallahassee, and say, hey, we that need this much energy and we want to lock in these low rates. And the utility companies, before they start getting any money for that, have to build the infrastructure for that additional power. Guess who pays for that? You and me. And what has happened is, in a lot of communities, and it's been really devastating, is that the data centers end up never happening because they're not just talking to Tallahassee, right? They're talking to Gainesville, they're talking to Orlando. They're speaking to all of these different communities, and they're going to who's going to give them the best deal. So if our utility company says, yes, we'll do it, we'll build the infrastructure in the contracts, there's a lot of wiggle worm when it's written that basically an AI company or a data center can pull out without any consequence. And that is a regulatory failure, and that's a failure of our representatives in Florida. Michigan established a framework requiring data centers not to impact other ratepayers, which is really good. And here's the caveat in Florida, and I've written a lot about this and advised the House on this, SB 484. I wrote this whole presentation before Wednesday when it still hadn't passed. Well, they passed it late Wednesday, and I was busy and I didn't see it until last night and that it passed. So SB 484, it passed 92-16, so it's both sides of the aisle really saw the value in this, and basically it requires large load customers to pay their own infrastructure cost, which is a huge deal. Unfortunately, personally, I believe the bill was a lot stronger when it came to the House, and in order for them to pass it, they watered down the bill quite a bit. And the way I look at it is that there's still going to be costs the way it's currently written that's going to be passed on to you, me, your grandkids, your kids' utility bills. But it is a good bill, but it's not a great bill. Kind of the way I look at policy is the fairness test, right? Like what is fair? And one thing, I think a big question that we all have to ask our politicians and AI companies and the data centers is when a grid shortage hits during extreme weather, which we have, right? We're in Florida, who gets cut first? And in some communities, especially in Virginia, which data centers now use 25% of the total energy in Virginia, many of those that have it that they have priority over the residents. So their data centers are up and going, then our families are sitting in the dark. And I don't believe that's fair or right. Fair policy, large commercial users bear the burden before residential customers. Several grid operators now require data centers to agree to reduce consumption during emergencies. If I was writing the bill, I would say that they would be cut off if one house is experiencing an emergency. I was meant to be here a few months ago, and just a personal story that my mom called me and said, Mark, I've been diagnosed with cancer and I have 4 weeks to live. I got on a plane the next day and I got to be with her the last 4 weeks of her life, and then I got to spend 4 weeks with my dad just to help him mourn and get adjusted and things like that. And so I lived in a retirement community just like this. I was talking to my dad last night. I said, I'm going to it's University Village in California, and I said, I'm going to do a talk on energy policy at the University Village of Tallahassee. And he's like, you think anybody will show up? And I said, I have no idea, but I appreciate you coming. But one thing that I really realized that meeting the wonderful community at University Village, and I'm sure your community looks out for each other as well. I've been so impressed with just the community that surrounds him, and I'm sure you guys have great community here. And one thing firsthand, I just realized how many seniors rely on electricity for different medical devices and things like that. So this is not, oh, the power's out and I'm a little hot and I can't watch reruns of Seinfeld. This is a life or death question to me. And my mom was on medical equipment, and I can tell you that if her medical equipment was turned off so people could do Google searches or do AI searches, I would not be pleased about that. So again, it's a question of fairness. And again, homes stay lit when cycles are down. So we need more electricity fast. I think that everybody gets that and everybody agrees with that. I believe that there's just a huge disagreement on how we do it. And because of the Inflation Reduction Act going away by the new administration and the one big beautiful bill coming in, essentially we have stripped the incentives to go to sustainable energy plus storage, which is not only now the right economic choice, which we will get into, but it also is the ethical choice. So just a real quick, a new gas turbine, again, there's a 7-year waiting list on that. And I'll make my deck available. I see people taking pictures of, you can take pictures, I don't mind, but I will, Michael has my deck and you can give it out to everybody if you are really bored and want to look at it. It has long permitting and construction, higher fuel cost volatility, as we're all seeing right now with Iran. I drive an electric car, but my wife drives an ICE, internal combustion engine car, and she went to I saw her fuel prices. I'm like, where are you driving? Like, and she's like, no, I don't really pay attention to like the pump prices because I don't ever go there. But she's like, no, gas prices in Tallahassee have risen as a result of global conflicts, which as a national security sense and then just an economic sense, when we have a better option than relying on fossil fuels, why are we taking away the incentives to move toward that? And then utility companies lock in their fossil fuel prices, which residents, we do not have that option, so we are subject to volatility. My big thing is solar plus storage is the way forward for most communities, especially here in Florida. Number one, about solar plus storage, it deploys in months, not years, okay? That's a big thing, so it's fast. We need it fast and we can get it fast. It's lower cost. It's $38 to $78 per megawatt versus for gas, it's $48 to $109 per megawatt. So it is cleaner, it's faster, and it's cheaper. So why aren't we all doing it this way? Politics is politics, and the gas lobby is very, very strong. We don't have any, in solar plus storage, we don't have any fuel cost volatility because the sun doesn't care if we're at war, right? It's gonna shine regardless. And then batteries store and dispatch energy on demand. The funny thing is, and I like the ironic thing is that this is not a blue state issue, and the blue states aren't leading the way in this. Actually, red states, funny enough, are leading the way. 6 out of the 10 states who have adopted a renewable plus storage are actually red states, and Texas being the leader. So Texas renewable output, it's interesting. They are all above energy, but they've led the way with 150,000 gigawatts per year in renewable energy. And they're also the top oil producer as well. But Texas and Texas utilities, the market is speaking that this is the way to go. 66% of Iowa's electricity comes from wind farms. That's the largest in all of the United States. And then 3.5 million Americans are employed in the green energy field. So this is a really big one here. When Berkshire Hathaway Energy subsidiaries committed $3.9 billion to renewable projects in Iowa, it wasn't making a climate statement, it was making a financial calculation. This is a really exciting time for those of us who care about the planet and care about sustainability. We no longer have to make the argument that it's the moral and ethical thing to do for future to leave them a planet that is not destroyed and things like that. It's actually the best economic decision because Berkshire Hathaway is not making environmental decisions, they're making financial decisions. These are all huge. I was speaking with Michael. Watch your news feed on Tuesday. I'm under an embargo on a major development from a global company, and it's going to change a lot. I can't say anything more than that. If I was here on Wednesday, I could tell you all about it, but be looking at your news feed on Tuesday. So storage changes everything. Basically, batteries were really inefficient in the past and very expensive. Innovation has really changed that. I didn't bring the graph, but I can share it with you if you ask. There's just the cost of storage over the years. And the cost of storage has dramatically decreased to the point that it allows solar or wind plus storage is still the cheapest alternative. And also, it's the best for the climate. How many of you heard of Babcock Ranch? Oh, wow. Okay, so Sid Kipson, if you know the name, was the visionary behind Babcock Ranch. Babcock Ranch is a community in South Florida. I take my grad students there every single year. Sid is nice enough to give us a tour. It is the first community in the world. It has currently has 50,000 residents. It's going to grow to about 80,000 residents, and it has its own solar field and own storage. And when Hurricane Ian hit, I went there the next week. It was just already scheduled, and everywhere around them were dark because of power outages, and Babcock Ranch lights were on. It was like a hurricane never happened. I could give you a whole hour on Babcock Ranch, which that's not why I'm here, but look it up. It is an amazing community and really what I would say a model for future developments for communities. It was really well thought through. Texas, after Uri, added 8 gigawatts of solar and significant battery storage after the 2021 grid crisis, where they had rate increases that were astronomical. And then finally, I wrote an op-ed on California. I'm from California. I love California. California was an early adopter. And unfortunately, when they were negotiating their rates, they negotiated them at a very high rate, and solar plus storage has decreased so much, it has put them the residents in a really bad place. There's lots of examples of good policy that we already covered, and there's also some examples of poor policy. So I'm very good friends with the former CEO of Danfoss Turbocore. You guys know Danfoss Turbocore? Okay. It's a global company. They have a manufacturing plant here in Tallahassee. They are a sustainable leader in the world. They create oilless compressors. It's all magnetic. In fact, I had them on the podcast yesterday. It hasn't come out yet, and he had from Denmark, they had their lead sustainability person actually in studio as well. We had a great talk about all of this kind of stuff, and so that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. But Ricardo Schneider said to me once, after he was like reading my articles and my analysis and stuff, and he said, "You know, Mark, the cheapest energy is the energy you never use." And that really hit me. I was like, yeah. And that is absolutely correct. I consider one of my consulting projects, I consult for Danfoss quite a bit, and they had me come out. They had a outrageous goal of reducing the energy use of their compressors by 20%. I am not an engineer. I'm an analysis and into systems thinking, if you know what that is. And I led a 3-day, basically design sprint with all of their engineers. And at the end of those 3 days, we came up with a 33% reduction in the use of power of their compressors. And when I say we, they did. I just happened to be there. But it's a major step and innovation in this area. So solar plus storage is great, but let's not forget about making our compressors and heat exchangers more efficient as well. All right, I love this slide. We're gonna be here for a second. You guys still with me? Okay, all right, good. Okay, so You are so much better than, like, when I lecture to my students, they're all like looking at their phone. So I appreciate, like, people are actually looking at me, like I'm kind of like freaked out by it. So you're actually paying attention. Usually I can just like go up there and do like read Cat in the Hat or something. They wouldn't know the difference. So this is levelized cost of electricity, unsubsidized, okay? So the commercial subsidizations go away December 31st, 2027, right? You don't know? That's right. Yeah. Okay, that is right. This is without this is just saying, like, if nothing was subsidized, what would the actual cost be? Okay? Let's go from bottom up. So nuclear is $141. You can't see it on my slide per megawatt. Coal, 108. Combined gas, cycle gas is $78. Onshore wind is $46, so it's actually the cheapest. And then utility solar is $58. This is without subsidies. So even without subsidies, it is the right decision economically to make. And of course, it's the right decision environmentally to make. But it's not just electricity. Everybody talks about electricity, but it's not just electricity. And this is one thing that I was really hopeful that the Florida legislature was going to get right, was big data facility can use up to 5 million gallons of water per day. And in Florida, we have a very delicate ecosystem. And that is a lot of water, and very few people are talking about this. So fossil fuels and water, coal uses about 20,000 gallons of water per megawatt. Natural gas uses about 13,000 gallons of water per megawatt. And Northern Virginia data centers water consumption was up 63% from 2019 to 2023, okay? Now let's go to the other side, renewables in water. Wind and solar, 0 gallons. 0 impact on our water here in Florida. Immersion cooling in data center eliminates evaporation and water entirely. And then, again, I love the planet. That I used to argue that it's morally the right choice. Now I get to talk dollars and cents, which I love. It's the environmentally right choice, but it's also now the financially, it's the right choice too. And the way I see it, if any politician votes the other way, then there's lobbyists in their pocket, because there's no other reason to vote against it. Opinion. So we in Florida have the most to gain from this. We are in the Sunshine State. I recently had an article, I believe, I forget where it got published, but that it was titled Florida Sunshine Powered State. See how clever I am? So again, we already covered this, that SB 484 passed, and it'll be effective July 1st. Babcock Ranch outside of Fort Myers is a fantastic example. I point to it all the time in my op-eds, and Sid Kipson is really happy that I do it, but it is such a marvel of what we can do right now. And then solar, again, deploys in months, not years. So it makes sense on a development side too. Here's the things that we really need to look at. Florida ratepayers face the same cost shift risks as the rest of the company. And without state level protection, we will be vulnerable. And last time I was in a civics class, I was taught that our representatives were meant to represent us, not the lobbyists, but I'm not sure if that's quite how it works. But that's where you can bring in somebody who's a political side major. Cutting renewable incentives while gas turbines face 7-year wait creates a grid reliability gap during peak summer demands. We see this in the southern states especially. We're all turning our air conditionings on in the summer. It's drawing a lot of energy. We're already seeing rolling blackouts or brownouts and things like that in different states. And then adding on top of that data centers and increasing, it's a recipe for disaster. And I personally believe it's not, the question isn't just inconvenience, it's a matter of life and death. And then finally, Florida's energy future shouldn't be decided by lobbyists in Washington. It should be decided by Florida families. So I think we should be able to control our own destiny, and the motives of lobbyists in Washington are very different than our families sitting around the kitchen table trying to keep the lights on and keep their family fed. And I just don't think it's fair that large utility companies and data companies, again, this is what I say all the time, and my students just shake, this is the only thing they hear, and they shake their heads, but I think it's wrong for companies to externalize costs while internalizing profits. All right, so I did this last night, so forgive me if it's a little rough. The data's correct, but it's really new. So it was signed into law, 92-16, unanimous, when the bill was really, really great in the Senate, an effective date then. So what does it mean? PSC must set tariffs ensuring large load customers, 50 plus megawatts, bear their full cost of service, not shifting it to ratepayers. Huge win for all of us, okay? That's great. Local governments retain authority over sitting and land use for large load customers. So another great part of this bill, if a data center wanted to come into Tallahassee and use McClay Gardens as, you know, their water source and stuff, we could go tell them to take a hike. Water permitting requirements include mandates to use reclaimed water where feasible. I don't like the where feasible part of that, because who determines where it's feasible? Unless it's me determining it, I don't trust it. So, and it bans utility service to data centers owned by foreign entities, which I think is a good add-on. It's not financial or environmental discussion, but that's what it is. Representative Griffiths, the House sponsor, he said, we have a ratepayer protection plan that the president put into place last week, and those data center executives signed a commitment so that no ratepayer should shoulder the burden. So the op-eds being written, you guys calling your representatives both in Washington and here, they're getting the message. And it's not just the lobbyists who are in their ear. The people are speaking and saying, hey, you know what? This is not fair, which I'm excited about. The bipartisan reality check. Okay, at the UN, President Trump called wind turbines pathetic and renewable energy a joke. Okay, that's not my words, that's his words. Whatever you think about him, again, this is not a political statement, but if we were responding this on environmental and economic basis, which we are today, we would say that that is an inaccurate view of what is actually happening. So the funny thing is, this is what was happening the same week that he said this, and I had a field day with an op-ed at the expense of our president. I love this quote because it gave me a really nice, soft pitched. 67% of Germany's generated 67% of their power of renewables in Q2 in 2005. That's a record. And they didn't retreat at all. They actually doubled down on their sustainability investments, even during the Russian gas crisis, which they are much closer to and impacted by. 42 gigawatts. Texas raised the wind capacity in their state by 42,000 gigawatts. And I think it's funny the state that gave us the Permian Basin is also America's clean energy producer now. And what that says to me is like when BlackRock and these companies are making these decisions and energy companies are making these decisions, we got to remember they're making these decisions for their shareholders, not the stakeholders, you and me, right? So when BlackRock and Berkshire and they make these decisions, they're making an economic decision for their shareholders, but if they're making the right decision, I don't really care why they're making the right decisions. Like my kids, if they make the right decision, I really don't care why you made the right decision. If you were like fearful that I was going to come down on you or you're going to like be grounded or cut out of my will or whatever, they made the right decision, so let's applaud that. So, 3 things that I believe actually work, okay? Number 1, fair cost allocation. We already kind of covered that, and I want to leave enough time for question and answers, so I'm going to kind of just brief through these. Market-driven generation, again, we already covered that. And then grid priority rules. Those are my big 3. That's what we have to get right to protect our neighbors, to protect our communities, to protect our nonprofits and our retirement communities and things like that. So really, the answer isn't that hard. It's pretty clear. Data centers are the backbone of the digital economy. You know that. I know that. Nobody's arguing that we don't need data centers. It is a value added. But innovation shouldn't be subsidized by the families on a fixed income paying $70 or more per month. We shouldn't have to pay for rich, which there's no problem being rich, I'm pro-rich, but executives making decisions and getting the rich off the back of American families who are struggling to meet their monthly obligations, I think is unethical, and it should be stopped. Our representatives should represent us. And the solution is not blocking technology. You're not going to see me out on the Capitol corner with a sign saying no data centers, right? I'm going to be out there advocating it and advocating that these companies coming in, which could be a benefit for us, but they're good neighbors to us. They're coming into our communities, and we should not have to pay for them to profit. States that implement fair cost allocation, storage incentives, and grid priority rules will lead the way in the modern economy. Again, opinion, but I think if we got more aggressive and we really wanted to be the sunshine-powered state, that some incentives, even though it makes sense without the incentives, let's put the incentives in and let's make it happen, especially for families to do rooftop solar. Because we just don't want to burden families in our policy. So again, this isn't environmental activism, it's just economics. So that is all I have for you guys. Thank you for staying awake and attentive. So I know this is meant to be just an hour. We have about 10 minutes for question and answer. It's up to Mike. I can go a little bit over that. So here we go.
Okay.
Where did I go wrong?
Hold on to the mic. It's
When you were talking about externalizing cost and internalizing profits, it made me think about a situation that our society had about 75 years ago with air and water pollution, where costs were externalized, us, and profits were internalized. And we dealt with that in a serious fashion. Is there anything we've learned? What do you see? It might be parallels about how we could approach this as a public policy, a set of public policy issues.
Yeah, I think there's a two-part answer to that. Washington has learned nothing. I think those of us who have a little more life experience and have seen rivers on fire because companies dumping chemicals and the introduction of the EPA, whatever you think about the EPA, if it's a net positive or net negative, but at least having somebody hold these companies accountable. Because you got to think the average executive is an executive at a company for 2.3 years. They are incentivized for quarterly profits. So these executives are making, obviously our whole system is set up to have executives make decisions that are short-term, that are going to profit the company in the short term and themselves in the short term. And the problem is when it goes wrong or goes bad and that company gets caught for them taking shortcuts, that executive who made that decision is already gone and at another company and not held accountable. Me personally, I think there should be accountability on the decisions. If you cheat as an executive and you take a shortcut, that should follow you and you should be held responsible. It's radical, I know, but I think we need to take a radical stance. I had the same problem.
There we go. Thank you. The magic man. Have you heard of any discussions at the Florida legislature, because we do live in the Sunshine State, about doing more to give incentives to individual homeowners or like CCRCs to actually do solar installations, because it seems like it's always bucking up against the cost of that, and is it amortized sufficiently to create an impetus to do it? And it drives me nuts because it just seems like there's always a deadline, and I guess 27 is some kind of a deadline for rebates.
Yeah,
but it's just tragic to me that we can't do more and actually help people make that investment, either individually in a house or like in a community.
So I guess you're going to pull the skeptic out in me. Yeah, of course, there's individuals, but there's the lobbyists are so strong and the people's voice is weak. The system, I believe, is flawed, and I don't think we're going to see Florida incentives anytime soon. I think we should, but I don't think we need them, because even without them, it's the right choice economically, environmentally to make. So I'm more than happy to make the argument without incentives. But incentives are nice.
I'd like to know what you would like to have seen on the water usage on that bills that have just passed.
Yeah.
Not where feasible, but what you would consider to be, I guess, the House bill that you felt was fair.
You know, we all saw what Nestle did to like Wacola Springs and things like that. You know, these global companies or national companies, let's face it, they don't care about us, the people who are living here. What I would like to see is that there would be a non-governmental group appointed, a blue ribbon community or a committee or something like that, who determines if it's feasible or not. And I would make sure that those would be citizens, not politicians, who have some sort of expertise in the ecosystem, which I'm not, like I wouldn't be on that committee, but we have somebody who's studying to be in the audience to be an expert in that. So especially in our community, we have FSU, FAMU, we have a lot of smart people, and they could look at it and actually give a truthful assessment of if it's feasible or not. I don't want some executive in Silicon Valley deciding if it's feasible or not in Tallahassee.
Hey, Mark, I'm the director of maintenance here. So usage is the piece that I think that I'm working on because I could find cost savings in usage. There's currently grants that are out there for usage corrections and stuff that I'm working on. One of them is ice storage for air conditioned systems and chiller plants and things like that. Is it worth staffing to head that direction, or do you feel like that money's really just locked up in a waste of time?
That's a great question. So full disclosure, I don't really study grants and things like that. What I do know is, the federal subsidies are still in place until 2027, and so the clock is ticking. If Westminster Oaks wanted to do a large-scale solar project, I would definitely look at the grants, but I also would really take those incentives that are going to be going away really seriously and fast track having Westminster Oaks at some level have Solar+Storage.
I just want to thank Mark for coming, maintenance director, and thank you.
You were talking about the lobbyists being so powerful. So I'm trying in my mind thinking of environmental lobbyist organizations. Mm-hmm. Earth Justice used to be kind of on the scene, and then you got the Sierra Club. Are they still there? Who are the ones that they listen to if they were to listen to a group such as, can you tell us who were the players this year?
SCIA is a big player. I actually, if I know you guys are researching Solar+Storage, or at least just solar here right now. I did a quick analysis of the proposal that you have all received. If you guys want to see that, it's 3 slides that just kind of outlines, and it actually answers your question. Who are the players? Yeah.
Is it okay for us to go to those slides?
I can cover them really quick, and again, these slides will be available to you.
I think you can probably advance them, right?
Yeah, I can do it. So I was given this last night at 12:03 a.m. So I'm well prepared. So I got up at 5 a.m. this morning to an email saying, hey, guess what? Not only did you have to change your whole presentation because the legislator, we have this whole proposal. Do you mind looking at it and talking about it? Thank you for the challenge. I like it. So here it is at a glance. IGT Solar, good company, 390 kilowatts is what they're recommending to you guys on 3 buildings. You have about $1 million initial investment. My calculations square with theirs, a lifetime net retention of $2 million. They did it with federal credits. It's a 7.3 year payback. Without the federal credits, which with the current administration and everything, I think making decisions based on without it, if you get it, that's nice, but it's 11.5 years payback, so it makes a lot of sense, I think, there. Your return on investment in 30 years is 187%. I think that's a pretty good return on investment. I would invest in that. Your annual return, they have a conservative scenario, 8.8% with credits, which I would say it's probably closer to 6.2%, and 16 million kilowatts produced or protected. And I think that they were pretty conservative on that protection just based on world events and things like that. I would probably be a little more aggressive with that. So here's my analysis on what works and what's in its favor. And then this is like questions that I would really encourage you to ask before you move forward. So as we said, just because of time, we already covered this. One thing that we didn't talk about, I personally, I think the right move is solar plus storage here. So that would raise your initial investment, but your ROI is going to be much better because when the sun goes down, solar doesn't work. So let's capture that energy and use that energy. And let's have solar plus storage working for us 24 hours a day. So if I was consulting with you, that's what I would recommend you do. One great thing is Tallahassee Utilities still has net metering, meaning if you produce more than you use, that you get a check or a credit back. So that's a fantastic incentive. Jacksonville recently took away net metering. And I believe net metering is fair because if you produce the power and the utility companies are selling the power, they should compensate you for that because you built the infrastructure. One thing I liked was the NREL model. Production data is the gold standard. So that's not just the vendor selling you. It actually was based in fact. And then there's study after study, even solar panels made 30 years ago, studies are coming out that they're still around 90% effective. So I personally believe, especially with the innovations, that the longevity of solar power panels are much longer than 30 years, but I think it's conservative to say 30 years, basing it on that. And they're really low maintenance. There's no moving parts or anything like that. Here's the questions you guys need to answer, I think. Number one, no battery storage. I've already covered why you would want that. Here's a big one. Utility caps are at 100K. You need 390. So you need...
It's 100K per account, Mark, and we have many accounts. But it's negotiable anyway.
It is negotiable, okay? And again, I don't know the ins and outs of how Westminster Oaks. So there you go. It's commissioned by the residents, not management. Obviously you're going to have to, I would say, educate management on why this is the right decision to make. Obviously, federal credit uncertainty. 30-year projections assume a 3.3% year grid energy price increase. I think that's reasonable, but that's not guaranteed, right? I mean, you have a war, if we artificially push down gas prices or something like that. So just going in wide-eyed, that 3.3 estimate is just an estimate. It's not a guarantee. And another big thing, and I've seen this, is the best way to do solar is when you're building the building. Retrofitting a building with solar, there's been some horror stories that the contractor, they're screwing stuff into the roof, right? And water can get in and stuff like that. So just being aware that you really need a advocate who is going to check the work of who's installing it, because the subsequent damage that could be made if it's not installed correctly or a mistake is made could be catastrophic. And you could do that. I mean, it all costs money to hire experts, but I think you're talking about $1 million+ project here. So paying somebody a couple, $10,000, $20,000, I think is a good investment.
Yeah, we did look at the original plans, and the roofs that we're talking about are concrete roofs. So,
okay.
The promise is good, but of course you would have to have an engineering study, and yes, that would increase the cost.
Yeah, exactly. So this is my final thing, is let experts get an eye on it. So I don't know if you've heard of Climate First Bank. But Ken LaRoe is the founder and president of Climate First Bank. He is also, I would call him now a friend, an ally. I really respect and trust him.
A speaker on your podcast.
And he's also been on the podcast, and he, just to let you know, Climate First Bank is the fastest growing bank in America. Everybody told him that naming a bank Climate First Bank, he would fail, and he's proven them all wrong. He's a great guy. He's an honest guy. He could provide the funding. That's what they're set up to do, and they do it at favorable rates. So I could make that introduction to you, and I think his expertise would be really valuable to your community. And then, as I mentioned before, SEIA, which is Solar Energy Industries Associates, they're your advocate. They're a nonprofit. They really regulate and really do a great job. I don't know what their cost structure is, but those are the two experts. If I was sitting in the chair with you and part of this community, which I'm maybe only a couple of years away from being in your community, those are the two experts that I would reach out to, and of course you can always reach out to me. So that's great. Thanks very much for taking that additional time.
Well, it's obvious that if we had 100% of our energy in the United States coming from renewables, we would be energy independent.
100%.
Pardon me?
100%, yes. I was agreeing with you. Yes, I agree.
The message that we're getting from Washington now is that we can become 100% energy independent if we drill for more oil. And we have to participate in the world energy markets to buy oil in this country. So as a member of the befuddled public, I'd like to know, how does that square?
Well, it doesn't, in my opinion. We live in a global community, so burning fossil fuels in England is still impacting us, right? So the reality is, if we wanted to switch today to 100% renewable energy, we can't do it. But the way I look at it is, if I want to retire in a few years, I can't do it today, but does that mean I don't work toward that goal? And so I would say that the current administration is not even neutral on renewable energy. They actually oppose it. I'm sure if you followed the money, you would find out why. Again, this is not a political speech, but it's just an observation. What I would like to see is that we continue our drive toward energy independence and I think we should do it with sustainable energy. Our competitors, China, Germany, or the EU, they're all doing it. And we're still like investing in VHS players while they're investing in streaming, right? And it doesn't make a lot of sense. And the subsidies that oil and gas companies get, I don't understand that. I've tried to figure that out, but again, follow the money, and you'd probably get your answer. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the bottom line is there's no way that we can become energy independent without renewables. Given the current global market.
I don't believe that we can stay competitive and a leader in the world without renewables. Everybody else has seen it and is doing it. My biggest concern is China on a competitive landscape. If I look at it, China is all in and they are rapidly moving to this. What I would personally like to see is a distributed energy system. There's a lot of technology out there that is making that available. And what I think, like in a perfect world, like in California, my brother's building a house. passing legislation. If you're building a new home, you have to put in energy plus storage in that home to take that pressure off of the grid. But then the second thing is doing a virtual power our management system, which we would opt into, which would say, like, if you have external energy, that could be funneled to somewhere that needs energy, and you would be compensated for it. And you're going to learn a lot more about that on Wednesday if you're looking at your news.
I just have a question for the organizers of this morning's event.
Yes.
First of all, thank you. But secondly, has this been recorded?
Yes.
And Mark's aware of that?
And I'm aware that it's
Just
being
to be
recorded.
sure.
Did I say something and I'm going to get canceled? Is
No,
that where you're
but I want
going?
to, we have a website here internally that's where we can post recorded events such as this. And so good. There are people that might be interested in this who weren't able to be here today. So good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark, how are we doing on
Yeah, we
time?
have that.
Do you have a time constraint? No?
I'm okay. As long as I walk out of here at 11:25, I'm good. So I can hang out until then. They're not hanging out, but that's all right.
Richard, do you have a question?
What about nuclear? Is that going to improve, or could it?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Nuclear has a lot of stigmatism to it. It takes a long time to build and deploy. There's Dr. Matt Carter, who works with me in our Masters of Social and Sustainable Enterprises, I think says it best. If you have a nuclear power plant, that's the best, cheapest energy. So don't close them down if they're safe. But building a new one takes a long time and a lot of money. And as you saw in the chart, as a result, is one of the most expensive forms of energy.
I think we probably should shut it off here since
right.
Mark has to leave.
Everybody's gotta leave.
Let's thank him again.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Before you go, Mark, we want to give you one of our highly coveted forum mugs. This is a
thank you.
memento.
I love
So
it.
Thank you again for being here.
All right, thank you very much. And I can hang out for 7 minutes if anybody wants to privately talk to me.